Okay, so for these are the outside pieces, the little file folder. I'm just going to put a little bit of glue on these and brush it out, and you want to make sure you go right to the corners. Again, Claudia used a little 2-inch, 3-inch foam roller, and it worked really well, and I do have one somewhere, I just haven't dug it out for this project. Here's one. So you could just roll it out. You just want a nice thin layer. You don't want it to be too thick because it does seep through the fabric. And I'm just going to lay this on the yellow and blue stripe. Like that. And again, I want to make sure I leave myself a little bit of room all around because we're going to be tucking that fabric over the piece of cardstock or file folder. Hope I'm still in camera. I had to close the blind. It's getting really, really sunny out there and hot, and it shines in my window. And my room gets to be about 100 degrees in here. The air conditioner just doesn't seem to want to reach from this room. Okay, same thing. I'm going to leave a little space because I need that little bit of a flap, I call them. And that piece goes there. Okay, and then I need my last piece. And this is the, what I call the front of the book. Right, and we're just going to brush that out. And this will curl if you get it too wet, so you don't want to make it soaking wet. You just want to make it enough so that the glue goes to each corner. And again, I'm going to use this yellow and blue stripe, so I'm just going to put it down here. Oops. Like that, and pull it over. So then when I cut this out with some scissors, I want to leave myself maybe 1/2 inch, not even that. It's a little more than 1/4. You just need enough to flip it over the edge of the piece. Okay, so let's get rid of that, and then I'm just going to cut this down the center like that, and I'm just going to get rid of this little fold because it'll make it harder and harder for me to, there we go. And then I'm going to do the same. See how it's starting to curl a little bit because it's wet. These are all my little scrap pieces. Move those out of the way. So we got those all cut out, and I'm going to glue everything at once, all the flaps and everything, so we'll know which way we're going. So next I'm going to take this fabric, and I always start with my largest pieces because those are the most important. The side pieces and stuff we can always kind of move around and make them fit into different little pieces. So I'm going to make sure I do these big pieces first. And again, don't coat it, but just put enough so that when you brush it all out, I'm going to brush it to the middle of this. And I think that's why she uses a roller. It spreads it a lot nicer. And of course, my paintbrush is hardening. You want to make sure you get some on those corners. So I always make sure my corners and my edges are done. Okay. Go. And again, you want to make sure you have that little edge all the way around. I'll move all my pieces out of the way here. I'm going to flip it over. And if you have a fold or a crease or anything, you just want to press it out with your thumb. Like that. Okay, so that's nice and covered. Now for this particular piece, I always cut this one out first because, make sure my edges are sticking. You want to make sure that you have enough to fold over on one side, but you also want to make sure you have enough to go over that little crease, because when you pull the spine up, you want a little bit of fabric covering that so that when you put your box up against it, it's tucked down behind the box. Done this backward. Oh, no, this one doesn't really have a pattern, so I'm not too worried about it. So I'm going to leave myself a wider piece on this side, like that, and then just the regular 1/2 inch on every other side, like that. Okay, so you need a little. So when I put this in the book, I'm going to fold all these flaps over, but when I put this in the book, I'm going to have this longer piece that's going to hang there, and I'm going to glue that to my spine. So when I flip up my book and glue that spine to the back of the box, there's some material tucked down behind it. If that makes sense. Okay, now I'm going to try and keep my fabric in the same direction, just because that's the way I put it, and it's probably upside down or backwards or something. And again, now we're starting with the base, the chipboard base. Always use your bigger pieces to make sure you get those bigger pieces covered. Now, because I'm using the Weldabond and it sticks to everything, I'm not going to worry about having fabric on the edges. Claudia does not like to put the fabric over the edges so that when you're gluing the pieces together, you're actually grabbing the chipboard. I like to cover my edges because I don't like that raw seam. Sometimes you get little pieces kind of sticking up when you add your boxes pieces to the side. It's totally up to you. You can do it either way, and I will explain both ways so that you can see how to do it. But again, gluing fabric to fabric sometimes is really hard. So you might want to use your Fabri-Tac if you're going to do it this way. Let me just get a little bit more on this one. And you can see why she uses a roller, because it really does. It spreads it nice and smoothly on the chipboard, but I like to do it the hard way. Okay, so we're going to put this down. And again, I want to pull my fabric nice and flat. Flip it over. And just really smooth out your fabric. Make sure you get it laying down smoothly. You can use a brayer if you like. Okay, so we've got our base piece. Now what she normally does is she cuts right along the edge with the fabric along the edge of the chipboard, so that when you glue your pieces up against the side like this, you're gluing the side of this to actual chipboard. But because that raw edge, like I say, you might get a little fraying and then you get a little piece kind of sticking out. So I will cover mine, and then this is covered in fabric, and I'm still going to glue them that way, but this Weldabond works fine with fabric. If you're worried about that, you can always use Fabri-Tac, gluing the fabric to the fabric. But if you don't want to do it that way, she just takes her scissors and cuts, or uses her rotary cutter and cuts right against the edge of the base, and does not leave any fabric hanging over. But I am going to do it this way. Okay, so there's my base. And I just want to make sure I have enough fabric for the two bigger pieces first. Okay, so there's my base. So that's going to be the inside of the box. So what we're doing right now is we're covering, this fabric is the inside fabric of your box. So this is what we're covering, the inside of the box and the inside of your book. You don't have to use the same fabric. This can be a different fabric and the box can be a different fabric. You can have the base of your box and this, maybe a striped fabric or polka dots, and then this inside, and your divider can be totally something else. It's 100% up to you. You can have the outside fabric of your box, the same fabric as the inside of your box. Again, this is totally how you want to make it. I'm just showing you how I make it, but you can wing it and you figure out your own fabrics and what you want to use. Okay, so now this is what we have left. And let's do that divider because he's going to be different. So what I'm going to be doing, the divider does not need fabric on the bottom. So I can get as close to the edge as I'd like and glue it there. And then once we cut it, we leave enough on that side that I can flip it over and glue it. So we need a piece of fabric that's going to be about that wide. Okay, so I'm going to glue this on. And again, I wrote in marker, and I don't know if it'll show through. I'm not going to worry about it. Normally I would just white it out with some gesso or something, but I'm not going to worry about it because I think my floral fabric should cover it. I just used a white fabric in the inside of that other book, and I was really concerned that it might show through. So we're just quickly covering this little guy, and again, you don't want it to be too thick, so pull some of that glue off if it's thick. We're going to put the divider here, glue it down. Always keep a cloth handy to wipe the glue off of your fingers. And then I'm just going to, and again, you don't need anything on the side, so you can get right up against the side of your fabric. You don't need any side fabric, you just need there. And then it's going to get flipped over like this. So you can just go like that and cut this off. But what you want to do is, see, that's a little sticky because I put too much glue on there. But what you're going to do is you're going to cut up the side like that. You do not need anything on the sides, and you do not need anything across the bottom. And I don't normally cut this off until I have this extra piece, because a couple of times I've cut it off and then thought, oops, I needed that fabric there. Alright, and we're going to cut this off. This is kind of tricky to do. Usually you use a rotary cutter, but okay, so we want it cut there and on both sides, and I just left that little flap there because when I flip it over, I don't want to make it so that it's too short. Alright, so now I grab this, move this out of the way. Just make sure you get to all the edges and those corners. Okay, and then all I do is stand it up on its end and flip it over. So now your divider has fabric on both sides. And then I'm just going to cut the rest of this one off and cut across the bottom again. Okay, could have used the rotary cutter, would have been easier. All right, so there's your divider covered. So when it goes in the box, it's going to go in like that. So you've got the top and both sides covered. And see what I mean by the raw edges? Sometimes they fray a little bit. So when you put them in, but all you want to do is make sure that when you put the glue on the bottom and you push it in, excuse me, some of the glue will ooze out, and then all I do is take a little spatula or one of my awls or something, and I just run it along here, and it kind of pushes that little bit of loose fabric underneath. But that's your divider covered. And now we just have to do our sides. So I can use, I'm going to leave my words up because that's going to be the outside that I cover with the other fabric. So this is what I'm covering, the blank side. And I'm going to put that piece there, and I've got to leave some around the whole edges of this piece. So I'm just going to make sure I get my edges and my corners, really spread it out, and then try and take some of the glue off. If there's too much on there, just pull it away. And I'm just going to put this guy on here. Probably shouldn't do it this way. I should probably do it, yeah, who cares. Okay, and I'm just going to cut this guy off. I'm just going to leave it like this. So there's one side done. Set that one aside. Okay, and I'm going to do these 3 pieces here. Keep that cloth handy to get rid of any glue that's on your fingers. Nothing like trying to pick up a piece of material and it sticks to you. Smooth that guy out. And then I need my other 2 small sides. Now we're not going to be putting fabric flaps on the bottoms of these. So if you know which side is your bottom, so I put this one on sideways, but that fabric I probably won't need, but I'm going to do it so that all my fabric is going the same direction. So I'm going to leave that. So this will end up being cut off on the bottom, and this will get folded down. So the same with this little guy. When I put him on, I just have to have a top flap. So I'm just going to set him here. And I'm going to use this piece as the top flap for my side. And the same with this one. And I'll show you when I cut it out what I mean. So I don't need anything on the bottom of that one, but I need a top flap for this one. So I'll just put it there. Okay, let's flip this over. Smooth out your fabric, and again I can feel that glue coming through, so I probably should have used my little roller, and it wouldn't have made the glue so thick and sticky. Okay, so let's cut this out. I don't need anything on the bottom, so I'll cut as close as I can to the bottom of this. There's one piece, and then these ones I'll just cut like this. Okay, I'm going to go this way. So what you need for your sides are like this, and this one's upside down, so don't worry about that word there. Okay, and I don't need this bottom piece for this side, so let's cut this off. So when you're positioning it, if you know that you don't need fabric on certain sides, you can put things closer together and not waste your fabric. trying to get these funky little... These are carpet shears or carpet nappies. I forget what they call them. But they're for cutting along the edge of the carpet. My husband used to work in the carpet industry and got these from a carpet installer. Okay, so there's your sides. Pretend that one's upside right. That's what you need for the sides of your box. And there's your base. We're going to concentrate on these ones first. So for your base. Now, let me get my little tool. I think they're in this box. Yes. This is a corner tool that I purchased from Colorway Arts. This is a lady that teaches the boxes, courses and stuff. And this is a corner cutting tool. And she normally just puts that on the corner like that and gets her rotary cutter. And I'm not going to cut it because it's on my mat. And cuts the corners off. Let me just move this guy out of the way for a minute. Like this. And again, I gotta get a proper blade in my rotary cutter. It's terrible. You want to leave 1/8 of an inch or the thickness of your chipboard on that corner there. You do not want to cut it right up to the edge of the chipboard. And you want to cut all your corners like this on the base. Now you can just do it like this or with your scissors. Just make sure to leave that enough of fabric on that corner there. Okay. So let's do the base. I always start with my long sides. Brush your glue on there and along the edge of that fabric there. And then I just put it up on its side and fold it down. Like that. And then I take my squeegee and I just press down on the edge of that fabric. Make sure my corner's in. Like that. Let's do the other side. Now you can do it this way as well. And you're just pressing down the fabric on the edge there so it turns in that little piece of fabric there like that. So when you flip this over, it's tucked in. Okay. And there you have a nice little corners. You just got to make sure your corners are tucked in enough. If I remember to leave my glue laying on its side, it's easier for the glue to come out. It doesn't all settle on the bottom. Okay. So normally she just cuts her edges off. I like to flip my edges over so that when I put it in the book and I butt them up against here, I don't get that raw edge sometimes coming through. So there's my base that's going to go inside of my box inside the book cover. So there's my base. The two smaller sides, you're going to take your scissors and you're going to cut up the side. And you're going to cut off the bottom. So the only thing that you have showing is the top one. there's this side and this one. And I just want to make sure my fabric is trimmed off the bottom. Like that. So you should always see the words or the pencil mark or whatever your name of your piece should always be facing you, and the fabric should be on the clean side. Now for this side, again, this is the wrong side up, so please ignore that. So silly little scissors. I always have a hard time cutting this. I should just use the rotary cutter, but make it very difficult on myself. Okay, and then I normally cut that on a slight angle, and then again you want to cut your corner pieces. You can use your rotary cutter. Okay, and then for the larger sizes, you want to cover the 3 sides. And remember to put a little bit of glue on those edges, so when you flip it over, make sure it's in, and then you could just flip that side in or use your spatula and just push down and slide it out. So you want to make sure that little piece is turned in, and then when you fold it over, you get a nice little even little corner there. So there's your one side, and you do want to make sure this is trimmed up as much as you can, as close as you can get it. Okay, so let's do this last side here. And I probably don't need this much across the top here, so let's just cut a little bit back. Sorry, I did get darker in here because I closed my blinds. So. And I'm just going to trim, oops, these little corners just a smidgy so they don't, when I flip that corner open, it doesn't stick out. Okay, so there's my 4 sides done. Let me just move some of the stuff out of the way here so we can. Okay, so now when we glue this together, you're going to need your masking tape. So we're going to glue it, and then we're going to use the tape to hold it together while it's drying. And it also gives it a little bit more security to the edges of your box. So I'm just cutting little pieces of tape and sticking them to the edge of my table here. Sorry, it's probably off camera, but I might might need a few more, so I'm just going to get this started, because sometimes this tape tears and then I get... So I just pull a big piece off, stick it to the edge of my table, and cut little strips off the end. And stick them to the edge of my table so I can grab them. And I usually end up looking down and I've got one stuck to my belly button because I'm leaning up against the edge of the table. So what you're going to start with is your smaller side. And while you're building this, you want to be looking at the unfinished edges. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a little bit of glue to the edge of my box here. Just a little thin strip, and I'm just dabbing it on. And then I take, before I do that, I take 2 pieces of tape and I'm going to put them on like one there. Go. And one there. So that when I set this on here like this to your edge, you want to make sure it's nice and even and nice and flat, and you're going to pull that tape down and tape it to the bottom like that. The same on this side. Nice and flat, and you're just going to push that tape down. You've got your edges all marked up like that. And we're going to do the other side. No, we're going to do, this is where it gets hard because we're adding that divider. Normally you add your 2 small sides like this, but because we have to put that divider in that's going to be going this way, I'm going to add one of the longer sides first. Sorry, I stuck my head in the way. So I'm doing this a little backwards. Because of that divider, it makes it more, you can slide it in, and that's why I've done it a couple of times, but I'm going to try it this way. If it doesn't work, then we'll go to the, you normally would put the 2 smaller sides in and have the U like this, and then you would put your, that's my divider, you would put your side on, but because we have to slide that divider between these 2 pieces, see, I like to make things difficult for myself. That's my divider. I'm going to move that divider out of the way. So for this one, I'm going to add a piece of tape to the side. And you do not want to have it come right up to the top. You want to keep it away because you're going to be putting something here, and you want to make sure it doesn't, the tape doesn't show through. And I'm going to put one on this side and one on this side. Okay, so I'm going to match up my small end first. Make sure it's nice and square, and you can feel it with the edge of your finger, and then pull your tape down. And then the same with this one. You're going to feel that bottom board. You're going to push it out until it's nice and flat with your board, and then you're going to push that tape down like that. Okay, and then you can just lay it down, and you push your board in, and push this board in, and make sure your corner is nice and tight. Like that. So that's going to be my outer piece there. So for your divider, now your divider has to go in. Again, this is really backwards. I normally do it with my 2 end pieces first. Okay, but we have to put this divider in. So I have a little spare piece, and you decide how wide you want it. But this is kind of my, it's a template to space your divider apart properly. See, we're going to have all these little raw edges showing underneath your divider. So you're just putting a little bit on the 3 open sides. Just a little bit, and I'm just rubbing the tip of the nozzle of my glue along the edge to smear it all out. So I want my pen thingy to go here, and I'm just going to put it here and push it up against that, So that's where it's going to go, right there. And then we're going to glue this little piece, and it's going to go on the inside and butt up against this long piece. Okay, and I got a little bit of a wow in my... So I think I'm just going to add the glue to the outside here. So I'm showing you the hard way to do it. Nope, I did that wrong. The glue goes on this side and along the bottom front. Okay, so you're going to add your pieces of tape. One goes here, and remember, don't let it go right to the top where the fabric is. And you're going to have another one going here and another one going here. Just going to pull those two pieces up with my fingers like that. So pull that piece of tape around, make sure my divider is where it's supposed to be. Flip it up, let go of my fingers. Make sure you're nice and smooth. There we go. Then we're going to flip it this way, make sure our divider's staying in there. And then we're going to do this. Actually, I'm going to stick my little, just to hold that in place. So probably good if I had two of those little dividers, but make sure there's lots of glue on those corners. And again, you don't want it to ooze, so you'll be looking at the rough side. Oops, where's my tape? You're going to put one on the side, one on this side, and another little piece here. And then I normally will start with one corner, and I lift this end up, and I start with my one edge, and I line it all up and get where I want it. Make sure it's flat, flush, push your tape over. And then I'm going to line up my other end. Make sure it's nice and flat and flush with the bottom and the side. Put your tape over, and then the same with this one. Okay, so now you can flip it up and you push your corners together, because that little end is going to be on the inside. And you want to make sure your divider is where it's supposed to be. And of course it moved. And I normally just squeeze my divider like that. And you just want to make sure everything is down, touching the base, like that. And then I normally would get a piece of masking tape. I'll cut it in a couple of pieces here. And I'm just going to go right where that divider is and make sure that that tape is nice and tight. And again, you don't want to go up onto the top of that fabric, but you want to push down on that divider and then pull your tape nice and tight, and do the other side as well. And let's just make sure that divider hasn't moved. I'm going to put my tape there. And I'm going to push down on that divider and pull my tape down. And that's just going to keep your sides pushed to hold that divider where it's supposed to be. Okay? And we're going to let that dry. And let's work on our side pieces here. We'll work on these side pieces, which go on the outside of the box, and this will be the other side of your flap. We're going to work on these next.